just read, and to lead up of that verse where Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what to do. So before that, I was thinking about all that he had been through, like, which led up to that. Like, he was betrayed by one of his own disciples for 30 pieces of silver. He was taken in front of Caiaphas, the high priest, and elders of the Sanhedrin. There they were trying to find something to get him on, to cheat, so that they could put him to death, really. And there's a verse where it says that in Matthew 26, it says that they couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything against him, except for two people who came up and said that he had said that he would break down the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. And based on that charge, they called it blasphemy, and they were like, okay, that's blasphemy, so we need to put him to death on that. And because of that, they decided to take him to Pilate first. And at that same time, one of his own disciples denies him knowing him. And Jesus had already predicted that Peter would do that. So he goes before Pilate. Pilate finds no charge against him. And when he finds out that he is a man from Galilee, he sends him before Herod because it was under his jurisdiction. And when sent to Herod, Herod and his soldiers mock Jesus, saying, you call yourself the king of the Jews. But Jesus doesn't actually respond to any of that, but they put a robe on him and kind of make fun of him. And even then, Herod has nothing against him, so he sends him back to Pilate. And Pilate in himself again says that in verse 24, he says that he finds no charge against him to give that penalty of death. And even there he says, because the crowds were so persistent that they wanted him being put to death, Pilate kind of got out of hand, and Pilate washed his hands and said that I give him over to you, you can do what you want. And because of that, they decide to put him to death, or crucify him. And so though there was no charge, there was a decision made that they would kill him. And then before his crucifixion, he was flogged. And when you look at that word flogged, it means that he was bitten so bad that there was no part of him which was left unbeaten. Also there was the soldiers who made fun of him and mocked him and put crowns of thorns on him, with kind of making fun of him saying that he is the king. And all of that was led up to the cross where he's lying there, where he's being hung on a cross. And though he's been through being mistreated in the midst of betrayal, being mocked, beaten, mistreated, spit on, kicked around, yet Jesus says that forgive them, for they know not what they do. His heart was more focused on others rather than himself. Even at that time where he could have, if we think about it, if something similar happened to us, we would justify ourselves by saying it was okay for us to be angry at them. We wouldn't say, oh, he did that to me, so we'd be okay if such things happen to us, we'd be okay by not forgiving them, by letting them. But Jesus, even though he went through all of that, out of love, he chose to forgive. Out of love, he chose to forgive. And it was a choice that he made to forgive. And from that, and as Jesus as our role model, it's not easy for us to do that. Because Jesus is the ultimate role model, and that we learn from him and are meant to be like Christ. And the things that we learn from that is, as human beings, we are fallen beings, and it's not easy for us to forgive someone when someone does something like that. Especially when you look at the things that Jesus went through. If we put ourselves in that place, in this day we probably won't have the same things, but being mistreated or being, if something happened which we didn't deserve or it was uncalled for, it's you'd think that it was not fair. And sometimes even when everyone else knows, or whoever's got the power to mistreat you knows that you haven't done anything wrong, but yet they choose to do it. So even at those times, it's not easy. As human beings, it's not easy for us to say, okay, I'll choose to forgive you out of love, though we are called to. It doesn't come naturally to us. And forgiveness is an act of faith, in a way. It is a choice that we do because Jesus commanded us to forgive people. So we look at, and the reasons we forgive, as we look at Matthew 6:14-16, is that we need to forgive because then when we forgive others, God will forgive us. So, and we need God's forgiveness the most. I mean, we need God's grace because we're fallen. I mean, everything we do, we're not going to be up to the standard of where Jesus said that we should be like. So we need His forgiveness more and more each day. So if we need that forgiveness, it's also we need to be able to forgive others, those who do us wrong. And also another thing is in Mark 11:25 it says we need to forgive so that our prayers won't be hindered. So that when we come before God, that we have no barriers which stop our prayers being heard and answered. So that's another thing why we should forgive. And also Jesus says of how forgiving is not just a one-time thing. So it's an act that you keep doing. I think it says about
70 times 7.
So it's not like I just, okay, you did something to me, I'm just going to forgive you and it's over. But it's an act of forgiveness which you keep doing, but it's something which comes out of love for God and for also people. So we do that. But end of the day, as for us, it's not really us forgiving someone. It's not for their sake, it's more for our sake that we do that. It releases us from being captives and gives us that freedom which God intended for us to have. So forgiveness, end of the day, comes to being free from the things so that you don't be held imprisoned by what someone else did to you, though you were mistreated, though you were given a wrong hand or something, but it is something that we do out of love so that we don't get held into or lose what God intended for us to have, which is freedom. And got a few lyrics. And it goes like this. As human beings, it's the hardest thing to give away and the last thing on our mind today. It always goes to those who don't deserve. It's the opposite of how we feel when the pain they cause is just too real. It takes everything you have just to say the word forgiveness. It flies in the face of all our pride. It moves away the mad inside. It's always anger's own worst enemy. Even when the jury and the judge say you got a right to hold a grudge, it's the whisper in your ear saying, set it free. It will clear the bitterness away. It can even set a prisoner free. There is no end to what its power can do. So let it go and be amazed. But by what you see through eyes of grace, the prisoner that it really frees is you. So with that is like I'd like to leave the thought of saying, if Jesus, though he went through all that he went through, he could say that I choose to forgive. That love which he had, which he said I'd forgive. And he showed us that if he could do that, we should be able to do that out of love for him and also love for people. And if we actually do that, it is beneficial for us rather than anyone else. It sets us free, and like in the verse it says that God came so that we might have life and life abundantly, and in abundance we have that freedom as well. So to live in that freedom and walk each day is a challenge, and also forgiving when it's justified not to, is something we'd like to think about, and something which I learned from there.